every once in a while you see something and it's just like, it distracts you from what you were going to do, and you're thankful for the distraction. Did you see how the grandchildren just came up when they're up here? I love that. I love the fact that they understand this is a good place, this is a place they're loved, and a place that I want to be connected to. I love that. I love that there's no inhibition, there's no, oh, well, we shouldn't go up there, you'll get in trouble if you go up there. But rather, that's my grandparents that love me. Of course I would go up there. I love that. That's an awesome way for me to start. So, I titled the message Rescue. And it'll become fairly evident fairly quick why I titled it Rescue. We've been given the ministry of reconciliation. That is our ministry. That is what we have to give to the world. And each week we have this amazing treat here where parts of our relationship are being reconciled. What has always existed is being reconciled back to us. And this is an awesome thing. All the thoughts, concepts, and attributes that have always existed are being brought back to their proper place, what they were designed to be from the very beginning. And this is a beautiful thing. And this morning we're going to take some time to rescue a very specific word. But I want to tell you about how I came to the fact that we were going to rescue this specific word. I was balancing a tire at the station, and it's a really glamorous job, I have to say. It's super amazing. And I'm balancing this tire at the station, and I'm thinking about probably 100 other things other than balancing this tire. And I picked up a wheel weight. And I brought a wheel weight. It wasn't the specific wheel weight. I brought a wheel weight into show today. So, camera guy, they got the wheel weight. Okay. And so I'm holding the wheel weight in my hand, and I'm thinking about this. Now, this next part is going to possibly expose the fact that I watch the Discovery Channel a little too much. So I'm just telling you up front, don't judge me. It's just the Discovery Channel, and maybe I watch it a little bit much. But this wheel weight right here had an incredible start. This wheel weight, the material that it's made out of, lead, started out as uranium. That's the Discovery Channel at work for us right this morning. It started out as uranium, full of power, full of potential, full of this amazing thing that can produce electricity, can do a lot of things, and after it decayed 9 times, we end up with lead. I started thinking about this a lot. I started thinking about the fact that there are things that in their original form, they existed with a lot of power, with the power to change lives, with the power to do something. And then over the years, there's just this slow decay. Slowly, lose an electron here, lose an electron there, lose a little bit of the intention here and there, and all of a sudden you end up with something that is dead weight. This is dead weight. This would make a great paperweight. If anybody needs a paperweight after service, you can take this weight home. It went from something that had power to something that was just weighing you down. Spiritually, why is this important? Well, James says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. What's coming out of your mouth has both the power to drag you down or bring you up. When we let our words get downgraded, when we move forward without a proper understanding of how the Father feels about when that word was originally recorded, especially when something is written, there was a very specific intention when that word was written down. There was a meaning behind it, and when we lose that meaning, we lose the intent, we lose all context, all meaning of what the writer was trying to express. Now, that's kind of in itself not good, but imagine that it's a love letter that's written to you. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. When I was first dating Christine, she would write me about a love letter at least once a day. And it wasn't like I just had this little box where it's like, oh, that's nice, and I put it in the box. Every time I would take that letter out and I would read it. And I was looking for every meaning and for every thought that she was trying to express. It was very important to me. When we look at what the Father has been trying to write to us, it is even more important than that. It changes how we feel about ourselves. It changes how we feel about others, and probably most importantly, it changes how we feel about God. Yeah. It's really important that we get what the intent is. So, without further ado, I'm going to expose the word that we're going to rescue today. We're going to do a joint rescue mission. We're all in the helicopter. We're all flying out to where the word needs help, and we're going to rescue it. The word is the word bless. The act of being blessed or living in a state of blessing. But before we rescue the word, I'm going to talk a little bit about where the word has decayed to in modern times. So, youth group story. There are some kids in youth group that can sneeze like a giraffe. I mean, they can really sneeze. It's not like this little nice, soft, polite sneeze. It's like loud. It's like the whole service stops until I can get past that sneeze moment. So we had somebody sneeze, and another person says, "God bless you." And I says, well, this is a teachable moment. I didn't understand who was going to be taught, but I thought this was a teachable moment. So I said, do you know what that means? And they instantly told me what it meant, because they all knew. They says, in olden times, now olden times for them, they think I'm old, so I don't know what their reference towards olden times was exactly, but it was olden times. In olden times, they believed that when you sneezed, it was because a spirit walked through you. And they were blessing you to drive the spirit out. To which I instantly disagreed with them. They said they were right. I said I don't believe that. I went home and Googled it, and evidently the teenagers were right. So now I always tread a little more lightly when I'm around the teenagers, because you know what, they know some stuff, and you better not push it too much. So there's this moment where, at one level, we have taken the word bless or blessing or, oh, that just blesses me. Or sometimes when somebody really messes up, they go, oh, you are just such a little blessing. And then I thought about one more time. And that is, now I wished I had a great story here, because I wished I would have done a little better as young Nathan. And if I could go back in time and talk to young Nathan, I would say, young Nathan, in this moment, you need to rise up and be a little bit better than what you are right now. But I don't get that opportunity, so I don't have a great story. But I have heard of several stories, and I'm going to talk about our young Mr. Max that has been extremely helpful in the youth group. And he was telling me, he led up for about 2 months telling me about how he was going to ask his father-in-law, soon-to-be father-in-law, for his daughter's hand in marriage. And he was working all the angles. I mean, he had, at one point, I think he had 7 different paths that he was going to use to ask this guy for his daughter's hand in marriage. When it was all said and done, what he said is, you have my blessing. Now, I'm not sure, and I'm only going from Max's side of the story, but part of me believes this. When he said that, what he was really saying is, okay, you win. That's what I really believe that meant was, okay, you win. You have my blessing. And so the problem is all this is developing something inside of us. And so then when we're reading through the Bible and we see the word bless, blessed, or blessing, we can take it to mean, I'm really in your corner. I'm really with you. I'm really for you. I'm really going to be there, up to, yeah, you win. It's almost like God saying, okay, you win, we'll do it your way. Or maybe even one step worse than that is, for some people, the blessing means, I believe in this hocus pocus spirit that's walking through you, and that I'm blessing that out of you, and a total detachment from the original word. Yeah. So the problem is, when you're reading, it does impact how you read. It does make a difference in what you see and what you think. So I'm going to go back to what the word meant from the foundations of the earth. The first time we see the word blessed is in Genesis, the first chapter, in the 27th verse. It says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. Then God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over all the fish of the sea, over all the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. This is the first time we see it in anywhere, and we're going to see it 302 more times, and we're not going through all 302 times this morning. Christine looked at me and says, we're getting out on time, right? I said, yeah, we're getting out on time. So I'm under that constraint. But we see that, and I says, so I looked it up. What does it mean? It says to kneel in adoration. To kneel in adoration. Something entirely different than what I thought. To kneel in adoration. It's a picture of this, if you could imagine. A father looking down at his children and saying, I adore you. I just adore you. It's not possible, but almost this thought of, you take my breath away. You're everything to me. You're it. And then coupled with, I adore you so much that all I have is yours. We see this. He gives him first this thing saying, I love you. I love you more than anything that exists here. And because of that, all that I have is yours. We see this picture of love acknowledging us and acknowledging that we're in a relationship simultaneously. Now, I was struggling for an illustration for this because it's like, surely something's happened in my life that could really point this out, this kneeling down and expressing this level of love. And somewhere 2 weeks ago, around 10 o'clock in the evening, I just gave up. I said, I'm not going to have an illustration. I don't have anything that's coming to mind. I've thought through all my stories, and there's plenty of them, and I just can't connect with one that does it. So I sit down to watch the Discovery Channel, because that's what I do. And I'm watching the Discovery Channel, and for the people that are watching online, it might not totally make sense, but we have a local jeweler, and it's K Jewelry. And they have a lot of commercials this time of year for the guys that are watching, and that's a little hint saying possibly the gal that you're connected to might want something from K Jewelers. I think that's what they're trying to say. So they're doing this. Oh, and one thing I learned in this commercial, first time revelation, because their catchphrase is, every kiss begins with K. And it came to me that the word kiss starts with the letter K, and it was like this light bulb moment, and I'm all pleased with myself like that. And then I start watching something happen. And I start watching it, and it's like, oh my goodness. Because here's what they had. They had 5 different couples. And they're all in romantic places, on the beach, out for a bike ride, at the concert. And then all of a sudden you see the soon-to-be husband get down on one knee. Yeah. And what is that husband doing at that moment? He's expressing, I adore you. There is no other person in the world I want to be with. I want to be with you. All that I have is now yours. And I want to be in a relationship with you, indefinitely in love. So we do have this thing that we can kind of connect with, where we can kind of see that. Now, in fairness, as awesome as that is, it still pales in comparison to what the Father is doing when he's looking at you. And that's why I want to just take a moment. I'm going to do something that's going to be super awkward every time I do it in the youth group. I watch them and they just cringe like, don't do this to us. I'm going to do it anyway. I want to just take 30 seconds. I want you to just take a moment, and I want you to just put in your heart the Father looking at you specifically and telling you, I adore you, and all that I have is yours. So we're just going to take a moment and be quiet and just let that pour over you. As that happens, there's this awareness that builds in you of how much he really does love us. It's just this incredible awareness of, wow, that is what I'm connected to. Unfortunately, from time to time in the Old Testament, that awareness waned. It became less. They were less aware of how much the Father loved them. We're going to move to Deuteronomy real quick, and I want to show this moment where the Father is saying, I want to reconnect that with you. I want to reestablish what's always been there. I want you to see. So in Deuteronomy 30:19, it says this. Now when I heard this earlier as a young man, this was always kind of like a mean thing. It was like, you need to choose today, bud. But we're going to get to where you're going to know. It's not saying, hey, bud, today's the day you need to choose. Deuteronomy 30:19. I call heaven and earth as a witness today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing, my adoration, and cursing. Therefore choose life, that you and your descendants may live. I'm going to couple that with Ephesians 1:4, which says, wow, Christine really should do that more often than me. She always gets the scriptures right up there. Ephesians 1:4 says, just as he chose us in him before the foundations of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. Because we know that the Father's always loved us from the foundations of the earth, it wasn't a choice. That first scripture wasn't saying, I need you to choose right now. Rather, it was saying, did you know you have a choice? Did you know that there was options out here? There was something more that I have for you that I've always had for you. And we see this rekindling of this lost awareness, a shoring up of the Father saying, I love you, I've always loved you, and I'm going to continue to love you. An encouragement from the Father to choose and participate in the constant of his love, to choose to be aware of his love towards us. So now we're going to move to something. I wrote this in like book chapters. It just makes it easier for me. So we're going to move to the thing that says the attributes of adoration. So in Deuteronomy, I know it's like total Old Testament. It's like the teenager would say, you really did go old school on them. Deuteronomy 28:3-6. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the country. Blessed shall be the fruit of your body, the produce of your ground, and the increase of your herds, the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your flocks. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. I started thinking about this whole thing, about what this was really saying with the context of the word and what it really means. And all of a sudden, you start seeing this entirely different thing. You see this. I adore you when you're in the city.
Good.
I adore you when you're in the country. I adore the children that you haven't even had yet. I'm in love with them. And I am so in love with you that all that I have, everything that's going to come in contact with you, carries the attributes of this love that I have for you towards you. The love of the Father has manifested itself to us through these attributes of love. Here's the trick. It is not impossible to use the attributes to describe love when the design was to use the love to express the attributes. And there's this thing that happens, and it gets kind of funny, and that brings us to the trouble with attributes, or what I'd like to call the decoupling. And so, sometime last summer, first I need to tell you, you know what the number one thing that has helped me with patience? This is like a life hack. If you want a life hack, this is a life hack. The number one thing that's helped me with patience, trains. Trains specifically in Fort Collins. They're magical trains. Last summer, I had a chance to work on my PhD of patience at a particular intersection that I have to travel through a lot. And here's how it played out. The train was doing what trains like to do. And this is what they like to do. They like to pull where they're almost, like if you jumped your car up on the sidewalk, you could go around it, and then they pull forward. And then about the time that the back of the train's just about where you could sneak around the end of that, they go, I know there's a guy in there, and I think his name's Hal. I don't know why, but I just think his name's Hal. And I think Hal says to the other guy, he says, hey, watch their faces when I do this. And then they start backing up. So we're going back and forth. And I'm looking at the guy beside me like, do you see what's going on here? And he's like, yeah, I see what's going on here. I'm here with you. And so we're kind of having a little Simpatico moment here, and we're watching the train move back and forth, and then they did something that was totally unexpected. With 3 cars perfectly centered in the center of the road to where nobody was going nowhere, the train engineer guy gets out of the train, careful to not catch eye contact with anybody. He walks over to this thing and he does a thing like this, pulls this thing up, gets back in the train, and takes off. I'm looking at the guy beside me like, did you just see what I just saw? And then we both did the same thing. We both looked at our clock to mark the time when it started. 21 minutes, 45 seconds. Yes, I was timing him. Don't judge me. It gave me some time to reflect. Exactly 21 minutes, 45 seconds for him to show back up. And as I'm sitting there looking at this train and thinking about my life, what I might want to buy on Amazon or something like that, you got some time, so you might as well use it. I started to think about this. It didn't matter how important or how cool whatever was in those cars was. They had been disconnected from what was giving them power to move. And they weren't going anywhere. In fact, if you want to take it a little one step deeper, the gifts inside those cars weren't going anywhere, and they were blocking others from moving as well.
That's good.
In the past, we've watched the spiritual version of this unfold. A decoupling of the love and adoration from the blessing of the Father from the attributes of love. We've watched healing, prosperity, word of faith, and yes, even sometimes grace be decoupled from the very thing that gave it power, the love and the relationship that it was given. And when you watch any revelation of love try to operate outside of relationship, just mark the time. It's going to fail. Because they were not designed to work outside of relationship. And in fact, it does this, and everybody's watched this happen. The revelation wasn't going anywhere. The revelation had stalled, and it was starting to affect others adversely. And we've all been there when we watched it happen, and it's like, oh man, I don't want to see this happen. Now we see this decoupling or decay in both the sons in the story of the prodigal son. So for ease of the story, I'm going to call the elder son, son number 1. The younger son, son number 2, and the father, so that as we're going through this, it'll all make sense. So we're going to start off in Luke 11 and 12. It says, Then he said, a certain man had 2 sons, son 1, son 2. The younger of them said, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So the father, he divided to them his livelihood. Yes, his livelihood. This moment, here's what son number 2 does. He does this incredible thing that we see happen. He decoupled the attributes of the Father's love, what the Father's love had produced, from the love and the relationship with the Father. He said they were 2 different things. And he wasn't interested in a relationship with the Father. He was simply interested in the attributes. Now, I'm going to tell you one of the beautiful things that happens here at Father's house, and it happens at a lot of places, that I've seen this happen with ministry a lot, where the ministry gifts are decoupled from the love. Here, they're meshed together. There's not one or the other. There's one thing, and it's called ministry, and it has both the attributes and the love. But this son, he says, I want my attributes. And so the dad gave him the attributes and says, get your attributes out of here. And so off he went. No, the father did not say that. But he goes, and like it happens very quickly, the attributes fail him by themselves. They don't have any stay power with him, and pretty quick it dwindles off, and he's with nothing. So we pick it up in Luke 15:20, and now he's figured out, maybe I need to go back and have a relationship. It says, and he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great ways off, his father saw him and had compassion. He adored him. And he ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. What is the first thing he does? He doesn't restore the attributes. He restores the love. He makes sure that this young man knows, I adore you. I have been waiting every day since you left for you to come back to this moment. So he's recoupling things as they need to be. The father makes the son aware that he adores him, and then he showers him with attributes, because you just can't decouple them from each other. You shouldn't be able to decouple them from each other. And he just makes sure that he knows this is how it is. Then we pick up son number 1, and we pick him up in Luke 15:29. And it says, so he answered, this is son number 1, so he answered and said to his father, lo. Now, whenever you see lo in the Bible, just mark it down. You're not going to hear what's really, you would just want to chop it off right there, because I've very seldom heard the word lo and then followed by a good thing. It's kind of like, I need to tell you one more thing. When you hear, I need to tell you one more thing, you need to have your shoes on already and be walking towards the door because it's maybe already too late. But he says, lo, these many years. Whew, he's pouring it on. I have been serving you. I never transgressed your commandments at any time. And yet, you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. And then here's what happens is, this is this beautiful, in a way, heart moment where the truth gets exposed for a potential for healing. Because there's never going to be the healing until there's that moment when we can say, yeah, this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm going to move forward, but this is where I'm at right now. I see so many Christians right now, and this is my little soapbox moment. I see so many Christians right now, and they're walking around saying, I don't have any problems. There's nothing wrong. And it's like, I think there's healing for you, but I think we're going to have to get past saying that there's nothing wrong. Because if there's nothing wrong, there's nothing being worked on at the same time. So the son exposes exactly where he's at. He exposes his unawareness of what true blessing was. He exposes the fact that he did not understand that his father adored him. He didn't understand that even a little bit. And in fact, he goes a little bit further and points out his frustration over the lack of receiving the proper amount of attributes relative to his efforts. What he was really saying is, why did I not get the attributes? Totally disconnected from the fact that his father adored him and that they were spending every day together. One of my true treats in life is the fact that I've been able to spend most all my days with my parents. And they love me and I love being around them. And he was disconnected from that completely. The fact that he had this beautiful relationship and it was nowhere on his radar. So then, the dad, thank goodness for the dad. The dad's awesome at all levels in this story, and I love it. In Luke 15:31 through 32, it says this, and he said to him, the father said, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. I'm going to stop right there. Best explanation of blessing that there is. Son, you've always been with me. I've always adored you. There has not been a moment when I haven't adored you. And of course, all that I have has always been yours. All the attributes have always been yours. When we get the attributes of the blessing confused with the blessing itself, we're kind of getting the cart before the horse. And we end up with this weird phenomena where our belief system stops matching our experience. Because we're gauging everything off of what the attributes are that are going on in our life. It's like, if we're having a great day, well, God must really love me today. If I'm having a bad day, well, probably he's upset with me, something I did. And there's just this connection with, when we connect with the attributes, we're connecting with this judgment-based system saying, I'm doing good today, so God must be loving me. And then we, of course, take it one step further and we start looking at others and saying, oh, wow, that's happened to them. God must really be unhappy with them. I wonder what they're doing. Because obviously they're doing something because that's why that is. And all of a sudden we have this fully decoupled thought process going of saying, I can judge my world, figure my world out by if I see attributes active or non-active in somebody's life. I know how much God loves them by how many attributes I see happening in their life. And we just totally lost the point. Which really drives home why it's critical to understand this. Critical that it's in your heart clear that he adores you first and foremost, period. So the value of the blessing, the value of being adored. I'm going to tell you the value, but first I'm going to tell you a story. A story of when I was a boy. Yeah, surprise! Everybody's like, oh my gosh, I did not see that coming. Of course, you all know that when I was a boy, there were chores. There were a lot of chores. And chores, it was always kind of like, really, I could have ran an airport at a pretty young age because you had to synchronize everything just perfectly that you got chores done, breakfast ate, your homework that you kind of half did in your backpack, and be up at the school bus in enough time. The school bus driver almost wore her horn out, honking at us three boys as we're running as fast as we can the little quarter mile up to where the bus stop was at because our timing wasn't always perfect. But one of the things you learn to help this move smoothly is how to walk through a pasture. This is critical because this is going to change your timeline a lot depending on whether you have good skills walking through a pasture or not good skills walking through a pasture. I was pretty good. I thought I was excellent until the dog that we currently have has come along. This dog is like this dog is like a poop ninja. That's the only way I can say it. It's the odds of you getting in the backyard, doing anything in the backyard, and getting out of the backyard without having to take your shoes off and have a half-hour clean-off process is very rare. That grossness is only exceeded by the fact that we spoil our dogs. Yes, spoiler alert. We spoil our dogs and they have wet dog food. And every morning, Christine, I know she's just like, just go in the other room. But she opens the can and my gag reflex instantly starts happening, kicking in, and it's like I'm gagging and it's this awful moment and Christine's like, oh, for crying out loud, just be brave for 5 seconds. And so I bet you're thinking right now, he just went off on a story and I don't know where he's even going with this. I don't think he even knows where he's going with it. I do know where I'm going with it. So we've got the two ends of this dog, so to speak. In a second, I'm going to introduce a word that half the scholars say that its best description is dog poop. The other half of the scholars say that it meant the table scraps that you fed the dogs. But keep in mind, this is not like current times where table scraps were nice. This was back when food had went so bad that it was not humanly consumable anymore. So this is the table scraps we're talking about. Yes, only the Greeks would have a specific word that would be that word, a word that could talk about both those concepts and pull it into a single word. But before I get to that word, I want to take a moment and set up why that word got used. In Philippians 3:2, it says this: beware of the dogs, beware of the evil workers, beware of the mutilation. Paul chooses right here to turn a phrase on somebody, because it was common for the Jewish people at that time to call Gentiles dogs, a subclass of people. Paul turns the phrase on the Judaizers and the ones that are saying everybody is required to follow the law. And he's saying, you guys are the dogs. Now he does this beautiful thing between 3:2 and 3:8, where he takes a moment to describe the fact that it's like a Fairness and Disclosure Act. He says, I was part of this. I was part of this concept. In fact, he touts himself as being the first one in line. If there was a law that needed to be enforced, he was first in line to help enforce that law. He was full in. He had drank the Kool-Aid. He was all in, all chips to the center of the table. This was him, and that's what he's describing himself as. But then he tells us how he really feels. In Philippians 3:8, it says, "Yet indeed, I also count all things loss for the excellence of the knowledge of Christ Jesus, my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things and count them as rubbish, that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having my own righteousness, which is from the law, but that which is through faith in Christ, the righteousness which is from God by faith." So there we see it, the word rubbish. It's translated a lot of different ways. But it's this concept of something so vile that nobody would want to have anything to do with it. And because there's not a lot of reference, that word's not used a lot, we really don't know which end of the dog he was talking about. But I'm going to push it a little further, and I'm going to say, I think he was talking about both ends of the dog. I think he was talking about, I'm no longer interested in ingesting what the law has. I'm no longer interested in producing what the law produces. Because I have found this moment where I understand how much I'm adored. I found out that all that meant nothing to the fact my Father loves me. And all that I have is from him, and all that he has is mine to have. When he saw the value of true blessing, of true adoration, I'm just no longer interested in the other stuff. I'm no longer interested in chasing that down. I'm no longer interested in going down that road. Paul has placed the highest value on the revelation that he had gained, Christ and him being found in Christ. A restored awareness that he was actively part of a beautiful relationship with his Father, with the Son, and with the Holy Spirit. So, here's what I know. Most everybody in this room knows this. You know that you're adored. But you know what I've found? I found every week when I come here, I found out a little bit more how I'm adored. Something that I didn't quite connect to. Something that had decayed from its original intent. I mean, okay, we were in Nebraska. I love Nebraska. I think Nebraska's neat. I love the people there. They treat you so kind, you almost feel embarrassed for being treated so kind. And I saw this thing, and when I saw it, I just grinned from ear to ear. The first 3 cars that I bought after I was married to Christine, there was no console in the center. Do you know why there was no console in the center? Because I wanted her to sit right next to me. I wanted her to be right close to me. And now we've got a whole almost entertainment center thing in between the two of us. It's like I'll send text over to, how are you doing over there? It's like, you really shouldn't be texting when you're driving. Yeah, I know. And so we're driving down this road, and there's this beat to pieces Ford truck. I mean, it's had a lot of fun and probably went 100 miles more than a lot of fun. And it's just going down the road, and I see this probably 70-plus couple, and they are sitting right side by side. This thought of when things decay. And when you remember how you felt when you first realized that your Father adored you. And then you remember how slowly you started getting a bigger car, more attributes, and pretty quick, all the attributes are in between you and that adoration. And you're still going down the road, and you're still going down the road together, but it's not the same connection. So this morning, I want you to leave with this. I want you to leave with the fact that each week, that reconciliation is doing something. It's dismantling what is between you and the adoration. It's taking it away. It's getting it out of the car. Keep letting that awareness grow. Keep letting it, when you see something go out the car window, smile and say, that means I'm going to be a little closer to the Father. I couldn't say it 1,000 times. If I said it 1,000 times, it wouldn't be enough. You're adored. You are loved at a measure that we can't even express yet. That straightens out a lot of problems, I promise you. Just really connecting with that. You are adored. I love this chance. You are what perfect love is looking directly at. Face to face, perfect love looking right at you. I want it to return back to where when you hear the word blessed, it has power. It started off as atomic power because it was meant to have that power. When the Father said, I love you and all that I have is yours to Adam, he was saying that to all the generations that are in Adam. He wasn't just saying it to Adam, he was saying it to all of us. Let that power return. Let the fact that the Father loves you not only be this beautiful thing, but something that has power. Power to change lives. I want it to be that you leave here this morning knowing that just because I'm going through something, just because I don't see the attributes just falling all around me. Was the prodigal son loved while he was gone? Was he adored while he was gone? Was he just everything that the Father wanted to have back in restoration? Of course he was. Just because you're not at a moment in your life where everything is falling around you and it's perfectly awesome, don't let that be any indicator of how much you are adored. You are incredibly adored. Sometimes we struggle with the fact that the attributes come, that good things come. I'm wanting to recouple those. I'm wanting to recouple those this morning that you would know that the love and the attributes of love, the healing, that all the things, the prosperity, all of it is coupled together and cannot be uncoupled as far as the Father's concerned. Let it be recoupled. If you had a revelation of who the Father was or what he was doing in your life and somehow it's waned, reconnect it to the love. Reconnect it to the fact that you're adored. That word that you got, that thing that mission statement that's in your heart, it's still valid. If it's stalled, it's because it got decoupled. Let it be recoupled. I want you to understand that in the same way that as our understanding of how much we're adored, how much we're perfectly loved, how much we are blessed, has been restored in our lives, it's created this abundance. It's created this thing where when you really get how much you're loved, when you really see, I am loved this much, it starts creating an abundance in you. It starts creating this incredible gospel, this gospel that you take to others. Hey, I've got some good news for you. You might have not known this, but you are adored by the Father. And that as we walk out this door, we walk out the door with this amazing thing that says, I'm adored perfectly, and this is what I have to offer my world.